As always, we do want to do a pre-test, and we will be doing a post-test. So as yesterday, in the chat box, Megan should be putting the link to this pre-assessment, and you can also use your telephone if you want to scan over this QR code using the telephone, the camera function. You can bring that link up, or if you would prefer, you can go to the chat box and bring that link up as well. We want you to use a unique 4-digit number. You don't have to use the same one that you used yesterday, but you can use any 4-digit number other than 1, 2, 3, 4. We want you to use something unique like the last 4 digits of your telephone number or somebody special's birthday. And when you're finished, we want you to raise your hand. Where is the raise your hand? It is when you open the participant link here in the center of your screen. You can find the raise your hand button at the very bottom of the participant list. So I will be quiet for just a little bit and give everybody a chance to take the pre-test, and then we'll continue on with the content. I'll check back with you in about 4 minutes. It looks like the majority of our group are done, so I will again proceed on. If you haven't finished the pre-test, please continue to work on that, and we're going to watch a little video in the meantime, so you go ahead and work on your pre-test. But for those of you who have finished, we are going to watch a video. This is sort of like a pre-test too. I'm going to be asking you to watch this short little video, and a lot of mistakes are made related to food safety in general, and specifically for preventing norovirus and for norovirus cleanup. So for those of you who have finished the test, let's watch this video together. Just like yesterday, you may have different connection times, and sometimes the audio and video may not sync whenever we're using this virtual environment. So for those of you who may need it, you'll see that there is a link on here, and then Megan is going to be putting a link to this video. So that you want to bring it up later, you can also bring this up and use this for training in your own school. So let's watch the video together. What your challenge is going to be is to identify all the different mistakes that you see being made. So it may be a chance for you to have a little scratch piece of paper available to jot down notes as they go through, because I'll ask for your feedback of what mistakes you saw being made afterward. Let's watch the video.
If you feel that bad, Nana, you should just stay home.
I wish I could, but I mean, we're already short one person as it is.
Okay.
I'll be all right. See you tonight.
Oh, hey. Good morning, Nina.
Good morning.
I'm glad you're here early. The three of us have lots to do with Sarah out.
Okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Just a little tired from a late night. Where are the production sheets?
Well, first thing we can do is start making the salads.
Okay.
Oh no! Maya, get the mop and bucket. Nina, you're sick.
Oh, Linda, I'm so sorry.
Do you want someone to drive you home?
No, I can drive myself. Are you sure you two can finish without me?
We'll make do. Call me later and let me know if you feel up to coming in tomorrow.
Poor Nina.
Yeah, I didn't think she looked very well this morning. And all she said was that she was tired.
Well, with both her and Sarah out today, we're going to have to hustle to get lunch on time.
This looks okay for now. We'll mop the entire floor after lunch. Let's wash up and get back to work.
Isn't Sarah under the weather with vomiting today, too?
All right. Hope you already had your breakfast and you're not having lunch anytime soon. Wasn't that fun video? So you probably saw several mistakes that were being made, and here's where, if you want to unmute yourself or use the chat box, we'd love to hear some of your feedback. You know, the unmute is right over here and the chat box is right beside your participant list. So Peg, I see your mic's open.
Came to work sick.
Right.
No soap, didn't wash your hands, went right in the kitchen and used your bare hands, both.
Yeah.
Put that salad together, and then she was touching her face, and then she threw up, and then she saved the food. And
Yes.
then improper cleaning. They did a ton of things wrong.
They did do a ton of things wrong. I know Amanda says the whole video, ew, and hand washing, no gloves, working while sick, says Roberta. No gloves, I see, didn't throw away the food. Yeah, Dub, that's absolutely important. We'll talk about how important that is. And only mopped a small area. We're going to talk about the importance of body fluid cleanup today, ladies and gentlemen, and use the mop bucket to clean. So yeah, there are lots. Anything else that you saw? Any other open mics who want to share? See, I heard Rita, but it sounded like crickets. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of different things related to norovirus that is so important for us to be aware of. And we're going to cover a lot of different things today. So why norovirus is important, I already said earlier that it is the leading cause of foodborne illness. Almost 50% or more than 50% of all of our foodborne illness outbreaks are because of norovirus. So if you added up E. coli and salmonella and listeria and everything else that you hear about on the news, it still wouldn't add up to the number of outbreaks that we have with norovirus. You know, the bad thing about norovirus, it is a very hardy pathogen. It's very resistant to chemicals that we typically use in a food service environment. It will survive freezing. It survives temperatures up to 140 degrees, which is our hot holding temperature, and it can live on surfaces for at least a week. Now, I'm here in North Carolina, and over at North Carolina State University, or NC State University, they do tons of research that I might refer to from time to time. And Dr. Leanne Jacobs, her nickname is Dr. Diarrhea. Haha. And she has done studies that prove that it lasts on stainless steel surfaces for up to 4 weeks. So it lasts on surfaces and it's hard to kill. So the chemical sanitizers that we use in our kitchens at 50 parts per million to 100 parts per million of bleach and our typical concentration of quat sanitizers are ineffective. Let me say that again, they're ineffective. They do not work against norovirus. So to kill norovirus, instead of that 50 to 100 parts per million of bleach, you would need to use 5,000 parts per million of bleach. I mean, that's a very strong caustic substance, and it doesn't matter what you use as far as quat sanitizer, it will not kill norovirus. So it survives, it's hard to kill, it resists our routine cleaning and sanitizing, and so it's really a tough critter to tame. So why is this really important? You know, our sanitizers don't work. There was a Italian chain restaurant up in Lansing, Michigan, that had a sick employee, kind of like Nina, that came to work sick, and he threw up in the vegetable prep sink. They thought they were doing the right thing, and they used their typical sanitizer. Well, 441 patrons later that came down with norovirus, they realized that they had not done effective cleaning and sanitizing. So that's one of the big things about norovirus. It's just a really tough pathogen for us to deal with. It's hard to kill, it survives forever, and it's just a really hardy pathogen. So if you have norovirus, here are the list of symptoms. You can just have typical flu-like symptoms: vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, abdominal cramps. Sometimes you might have a fever, sometimes you might have chills, but typically you just will have typical stomach flu type symptoms. Now, interestingly, at least 30% of people who have norovirus are asymptomatic. They don't have any symptoms at all, so they come to work and they don't know that they're sick. If you do get exposed to norovirus, usually within 1 to 2 days, you come down with these symptoms, and usually the symptoms go away in 1 to 3 days. So, the bad part about, or I guess the good thing about norovirus is that it doesn't make you really, really sick. You're just inconvenienced with projectile vomiting and explosive diarrhea for 1 to 3 days, and then you're over it. But some of our immune compromised individuals, the very young and the very old, because they can't keep fluids down because of these symptoms, can get dehydrated and can have some cardiac symptoms because of that dehydration. So symptoms, again, are just typical stomach flu. It's highly contagious. If you look at the number on here, 1 trillion viral particles. I talked about this yesterday, 1 trillion. That is a 10, and if you put 12 zero, a 1 with 12 zeros behind it, that is a lot of pathogens, and that's in 1 gram of feces. What does a gram look like? It's about the size of a third of a raisin is about what that would look like. So, obviously it's easily transmitted in feces. And so if we don't wash our hands after going to the bathroom, it's very easy for us to transmit it. It's also aerosolized. It gets, dispersed into the air. So if someone vomits, like we just saw Nina do, it's not just in the splat zone, so to speak, but it's also wandering out through the air and landing on every surface all around us. And what we're finding is that zone is about 25 feet at a minimum. So with this, you only need 18 particles for someone to get sick. So a lot of love to go around. If you have norovirus and you have vomiting and you have diarrhea and you're not a good hand washer, you've got a lot of people who could get very sick very easily around you. And that's the challenge whenever we work in food service, because we handle food all day long. If we're not great hand washers, and if we don't prevent bare hand contact with ready to eat food, then a lot of people can get exposed to this. So how do we get norovirus transmitted? The most common, similar to our coronavirus right now, is person to person. If you see the graph here, person to person transmission is the easiest. So what does that mean? If I walk up to you and I have had vomiting and diarrhea and I haven't washed my hand and I shake hands with you, now your hand has this on you, and whatever, if you touch your face or if you pick up food and eat with your hand, then you're getting it ingested into your system. And that's how person to person happens. It also happens through food. The second most common way is through food. And so again, as food handlers, if we're touching food, handling food, and we don't practice good personal hygiene, it's very easy for us to transmit. Give you another example. There was down in Georgia, there was a grocery store bakery worker who came to sick. Yep, you guessed it, work. She was sick and she was at work, and she started making the icing that she was using in the bakery. She didn't use gloves. She had bare hand contact with all the food, and she iced all these great cakes. 1,000 customers later, they found the source of the norovirus outbreak, which was that one person. That one person caused over 1,000 people that bought things from that bakery to get sick. So it's just really easy for us to get a lot of people sick whenever we have bulk food preparation like we do in schools. It can also be transmitted through water and environmental surfaces. If you think about every surface in the kitchen, every handle on every refrigerator, every cart, common touch surfaces all over the place, all you have to do is go behind someone who has touched that door handle and touch other surfaces. You probably have heard about norovirus from cruise ships. And it's so easy if you think about all the common touch surfaces of handrails and elevator buttons and everything else that you might find. Interestingly, at the Conference for Food Protection, they're the people who write the food code. They did a norovirus session, and they had someone from Holland American Cruise Line, and that person said, we cut our norovirus rates by 70%. And it was like that E.F. Hutton moment where everybody leaned forward and wanted to know, well, how did you do that? What they did is, for the first 3 days of the cruise, they didn't allow passengers to serve themselves at the buffet. You could have as much food as you wanted to at the buffet, but it was a crew member that served your tray. And it's just that common touch surface of everybody touching utensil handles. You know, think of the buffets that we eat at. Every utensil sitting on that buffet has been touched by every person who has eaten at that buffet before you did. And then you pick up something with your bare hands and it goes in your mouth, and that's how you get it. Grossed out yet? Okay, let's talk about aerosolized particles. So it's transmitted up to 25 feet at a minimum, though they're still debating on it could be further than that. So if we had a child who came into school sick and they came into our cafeteria and sat down with a tray, and all of a sudden, like Nina, they got sick. In addition to just that little ground zero splat zone they had, it spread literally to the entire area around them. Every tray, every table, every person, it can be landing, being breathed in, landing on your lips, and again, everywhere around you. So for that reason, that's why shutting down operations immediately when a vomiting incident happens is absolutely crucial for us. Just because of that transmission zone by air, we need to make sure that we're doing a thorough cleaning and really evacuate a specific area. So here's what we're going to focus on today. How do we prevent this from happening? We're going to make sure that everybody plays a PART, a part in norovirus prevention, and that means we're going to rehash good personal hygiene habits similar to what we talked about yesterday, the trio or the three-legged stool that FDA talks about. We're going to talk about, in the event that we do have a body fluid cleanup, that we have a kit that's assembled and ready to go, and we're trained to know how to use everything, that we respond appropriately to this vomiting incident, and then we do a thorough total cleanup after we respond before we restart operations. So with that, again, at any time, if you have comments or you have questions, I would love to hear those at any time. Are we ready to learn? Okay. So here we go. The FDA has what we talked about yesterday, the three-legged stool. How do we prevent foodborne illness outbreak, and specifically norovirus outbreak? And that starts with effective hand washing, no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food, and having an employee health and wellness program, which means we report illnesses and we go through exclusion and restriction. So we're going to go through the focus of watching a video and looking at times when we should wash our hands, and then the technique of how to be really great, effective hand washers. We know that hand washing has to happen frequently, and we have to do a thorough job of it. So we're going to watch another video. As the video is playing, I want you to watch and identify when hands were washed, and then the technique how they washed their hands. This again is going to be a YouTube video, so if you needed to bring this one up in The link is put into the chat box if you have any connection issues there. All right, so we just watched a video, and let's either open our mic or use the chat box. And then again, the chat box is right beside the participant list. And when should we wash our hands? We came up with a great list yesterday. See, I see Ruth's mic open.
You should wash them when you are changing tasks, doing different from one task to another.
Right, changing tasks, good. I see that Vic says when arriving at work, good.
After using restroom.
After using the restroom, and also I see Rita says between tasks, and I see, let's see, working with raw meat. Absolutely, whenever we're going from raw meat to anything else. After using the phone, Roberta says, getting to work, changing jobs, using the bathroom. Diane and Peggy say sneezing. Any other times? We came up with a great list yesterday. After touching your face, Roberta says. There were a couple of times whenever we came up with our list yesterday of things that we didn't quite make on the list, but we went over them afterwards. And do you remember some of those times? I don't see anything going into the chat box. We also talked about anytime you're using chemicals, whenever you're taking out trash, handling money. We already said using the phone. I see touching your apron or closing after using sanitizer, which would be a chemical. Good. Yeah, those are all times when we should wash our hands. Essentially, anytime we're going from one task to another, changing gloves, anytime they could be contaminated before work, after going to the bathroom, after eating and sneezing and coughing and all of those, but touching any body part or touching someone else, those are times we want to wash our hands, and we want to do a great, thorough job of it. Now, if you've been in food safety training before, you've probably seen GlowGerm being used, and we're not going to be using GlowGerm today because it's kind of hard to do it at a distance, but we're going to watch someone wash their hands very thoroughly, and they're going to be using ink to show you just how thorough hand washing works. So you're going to watch this person put ink on their hand, and the motion of going between our fingers, getting our fingernails, getting the opposite thumb, going all the way up to our wrist to do all of the hand washing procedures. You know, many of us just kind of do a quick little splash and go, and that's the importance of us doing a great, thorough job with our hands. So let's watch this video and see if you learned something about hand washing. See, just that quick little rubbing together, you're missing a lot of skin and surface. So that's why we rub between our fingers, overlapping. But still the fingertips haven't been touched yet, so we're doing a quick little, you can either rub this way Now that is a thorough job of hand washing. And I guess I might ask you, does that surprise you about the technique of hand washing? Again, feel free to open up your microphone or type anything in the chat box, but whenever you watch this video, what kind of came to your mind? See, I see Peg and Diane's mic is open, but I don't hear you talking.
Well,
A lot of, if you watch that video, a lot of people don't thoroughly wash their hands.
No.
I don't. I mean,
because they don't do the back of their hands.
I would just check if when I garden and I come back in, I said I could definitely not pass that test.
Right.
Because there are so much dirt on my hands when I come in, I know I can't get it off.
Yeah. But you know, we talk about a 20 seconds of scrubbing,
Right.
and that's, you know, it's getting every surface that, I mean, if you think about having chicken goo on your hand. That chicken goo would be all over your hands, and if we don't get it from our nails or in between our fingers, then the next thing that we touch, then we could very easily be contaminating it. Now, Rita's asking, can you use a nail brush? Yes, nail brushes can be used, and that's a good way to get around the nail beds and around your cuticles and everything. However, a nail brush can cross-contaminate. So if you have a common nail brush, it has to be kept in disinfectant solution, because if you use a nail brush and the person behind you uses a nail brush, whatever you have on your hand then can get transmitted to that person's hands. So they've really fallen out of favor. You can, if you can do it effectively and safely, yes, you can. Roberta asked, how easy would it be to miss spots on your hands? Yeah, very easy. And if you've ever been in training where you've used glow germ, for me, this video and that glow germ is that aha moment for all of us to say, we can all be better hand washers. We all need to be singing that happy birthday twice instead of just doing the quick splash and dash and go, but singing happy birthday twice, singing our ABCs, singing the Lord's Prayer you said yesterday, whatever it takes to get that 20 seconds of good scrubbing under your fingernails, yeah, absolutely, is really important. And so she was rubbing and scrubbing and getting all of those different surfaces, because again, pathogens can be all over our hands if we're not effectively washing it. So with hand washing, what we're doing is we are trying to loosen bacteria. If you think about friction and flow, the hand washing and the soap, we're not trying to kill germs, we're trying to loosen them. And that's why having lots of soap and lots of lather and lots of scrubbing motion is loosening everything that's on our hands. And then that rinsing action rinses everything off. Now, just like yesterday, we have lots of great posters that are available from the Institute. So the steps, as we saw, is yesterday and in this video, is that we have running water, we get our hands wet, we lather and we scrub. The food code says for a minimum of 10 to 15 seconds with a total wash time of 20 seconds. But you'll notice the third step is you're getting the backs of the hands, the wrists, between the fingers, under your fingernails. It's that good thorough scrubbing that's important. Then we rinse, dry our hands, and turn off the faucet so that we don't recontaminate our hands. Again, if you had chicken goo on your hand and you turn the faucet on with chicken goo, then you're touching the handle that has chicken goo on it and everybody else's germs who have touched that handle before you. So using that as a barrier is really great. I also use it to open the door to get out of toilets and the bathroom too, because you don't know who has touched that door handle and didn't wash their hands. I know you've all been to public restrooms and you have all seen people leaving public restrooms without washing their hands. That handle is probably really ultimately nasty. So there's a great effective way for us to wash our hands. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is bare hand contact. And if you remember that 1 trillion, a 1 with 12 zeros behind it, 1 trillion pathogens that could be in a tiny little dot of fecal matter. If we're effective hand washers, if we just spent that whole time and got red dye like we saw all over our hands, still we can have lots of pathogens on our hands. A good effective hand wash, according to the food code, is a 2 to 3 log reduction. What that means is that you can knock 2 or 3 of those 12 zeros off, which means you could still have 1 billion germs on your hand if you have norovirus, even if you're a great hand washer. That's why we need to have an additional barrier on our hands for bare hand contact. So we're going to do a quick little activity, and here is where we're going to have 4 breakout rooms. And if you want to, I want you to take a snap. At least one person that should show up in your breakout room with a snap of this picture that we see here. Are we going to do 4 or are we going to do 8, Megan?
We are doing 8.
8, okay, yeah, we're going to do 8. So half of you are going to be doing some of these activities, some of you are going to be doing others. So we're going to have you click a picture of here, and breakout room number 1 and 2, when you go out to your breakout rooms, you're going to see a number for your breakout room. Make sure you notice your number. Breakout number 1 and breakout number 2 are going to be working on the first question. What are ready-to-eat foods? I want a definition only. Group number 3 and 4 is going to be working on examples of ready-to-eat foods that you serve in your school. Number 5 and 6, you're going to be answering why are ready-to-eat foods more likely to spread norovirus. And the last 2 groups, number 7 and 8, in addition to gloves, what can we do to prevent bare hand contact? So if you have had a chance to snap this, again, groups 1 and 2 are question number 1, 3 and 4, question number 2, number 2, 4, 5, 6 are question number 3. I'm getting confused myself. And group 7 and 8 are working on question number 4. All right, we'll see you when you come back from your breakout rooms. And if you have any questions before we go to breakout rooms? Okay, we'll see you when you get back. Thanks, Megan. Okay.
Are you ready to talk?
Great, we've got everyone back, it looks like, I believe, from our breakout rooms. So we would like to get both group number 1 and group number 2 to get their answer for question number 1. What are ready-to-eat foods? What does group number 1, if you could give us a brief definition of what you think ready-to-eat foods are? Who's our spokesperson?
Group number 2.
Group number 1 spokesperson. Okay, what about group number 2 spokesperson? We'll skip back and forth. Who is our group number 2 spokesperson?
We didn't pick one, but go ahead, Mel.
Okay.
Are not cooked foods.
Not cooked
You don't
foods.
have to cook.
Okay. You don't have to cook. And what about were you group number 1 or group number 2?
2.
Number 2. Okay, what about group number 1? Do we have a spokesperson for group number 1 that has a different answer or the same answer? Nope. I don't hear a report in from group number 1. So ready-to-eat foods are, just like group number 2 said, they aren't going to be cooked from or washed. I'll throw that one in, cooked or washed from that point forward. So for example, a ready-to-eat food could be any of our foods that are served raw. It could be all of our fresh fruits and vegetables. It could be rolls. It could be anything, again, that's not going to be cooked before it's served. Ready-to-eat food is not a head of lettuce that hasn't been washed. So ready-to-eat lettuce is not ready to eat until it has been washed, and then we start chopping it. The same thing with a cantaloupe. With the rind on it, it's not ready to eat. Once we have the rind off of it, now it's a ready-to-eat food. Right. So it's anything that's not going to be cooked or washed from that point forward. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, good. So the question I have for group number 3 and group number 4, if group number 3 could give us 2 or 3 examples of ready-to-eat foods that you serve in your school, and then we'll have group number 4 give us some examples. So group number 3 spokesperson.
Well, that would be me, since I was a group of 1.
Oh, okay, Lisa.
Sorry, I had a state person and then someone who didn't respond to anything. So this is what I came up with, like my fresh fruits and vegetables, like my baby carrots and stuff, and my subs, my cold sandwiches, because they don't get cooked.
Yeah, those are all great examples, Lisa. Thanks for being a great group of 1. At least you didn't have any conflict in your group, right? Okay, now what about group number 4? Did you have some additional examples of ready-to-eat foods that you serve? Group number 4.
We were talking about all the different fruits that we served, and like our chopped salads and and fresh vegetables and those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are good examples. It would be all fresh fruits and vegetables that we're serving that don't have a cook or kill step in them. And it would be all of those cold sandwiches that we would serve. And again, anything that we aren't cooking or doesn't require a wash step from that point forward. So we get pre-bagged lettuce, it's ready to eat. If you're getting pre-chopped bagged lettuce, it is ready to eat. On the other hand, if you're getting a whole head of lettuce and you have to wash the lettuce and chop it yourself, it's not ready to eat until you have washed it. Okay, so group number 2, 4, 6, and 5 and 6. I'm confusing myself this morning, aren't I? Why are ready-to-eat foods more likely to spread norovirus? Who might want to respond to that from group 5 and 6?
This is Diane from group 5.
Okay, thanks, Diane.
We decided because they're not heated to a certain temperature, they may or may not be properly rinsed appropriately. There's more handheld foods, and you might, if somebody's not wearing gloves appropriately or utensils, the pre-packed cereals, how many people have handled those containers before you've actually handed them out, you know, in the packaging and things. And then the foods might not be individually wrapped like the bulk lettuce and things like that. And there's just more chance of people handling the foods.
Yeah, Diane, you are on the money with all of that. And I also want to hear from our next group, group number 6. Do you concur with that, or do you have additional information to share? Why are ready-to-eat foods more likely to spread norovirus? Do we have a spokesperson there?
We never chose anyone, I guess, but yes, we would concur with all of that.
Okay, well, thanks, Andrea. Glad to hear that. Yeah, so 2 big things: more hand contact, and it could be dirty hands, dirty gloves, dirty utensils. And secondly, there's no kill step. So because these foods generally are not being cooked, if you have raw chicken and you touch raw chicken with your bare hands, the chicken's still going to be cooked. But if you touch raw lettuce with your bare hands, it's not going to be cooked, so you don't have that kill step. So you were absolutely on the money with that, with our other group. Okay, 7 and 8, groups number 7 and 8. Give us one item from group number 7. In addition to gloves, what can we use to prevent bare hand contact? Who's our group number 7 spokesperson?
This is Ruth, and we talked about utensils such as tongs, spoons, ladles, anything to get the food out so you don't have to touch it with your hand.
Okay, great, Ruth. That is absolutely correct. And what about group number 7 spokesperson? I mean, yep. group number 8 spokesperson.
We had basically all the same answers there.
Okay, anything in addition to that?
This is Ruth again. I would add too that we also talked about pre-wrap products such as like crackers in a bag or little boxes of raisins, or like if you make your sub sandwiches, you've got them wrapped up, and you could go from there.
Yeah, and to add on to that, both Anne and Ruth, deli sheets. You know, you might see that whenever you go into a donut store where you've got the little deli sheets where you can pick up things with that, which is an additional barrier. And that's what we're focusing on, is no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food. So we have that additional barrier in place because we know these ready-to-eat foods are more potentially likely to transmit food pathogens that might be on hands and that might be on the surface of that pathogen because there's no kill step. So good job, everybody. Great to have you in the breakout rooms again. And we'll proceed on with talking about making sure that we are doing the 3rd part of our prevention, which is making sure that we're reporting illnesses. We went over the ones that are reportable yesterday, and it's so key important that we report symptoms to our manager, because how do they know we're sick? How do they know how to respond? We have to tell them. And that's really one of the things that we have. It was interesting in that there was a study on why people don't report their symptoms. And interestingly, one of them is because many people, especially in quick serve fast food restaurants, don't get paid time off. I think most schools do have paid sick leave, but many of our quick serve restaurants do not get paid sick, because though if they are out of a job for a day, they lose pay for a day. So it's monetary. Secondly, many of us don't want to let our team members down, just like Nina in the vomiting girl in our video didn't want to let the team down because of her sickness. And then third is because they're afraid the manager might get mad at them because they're calling in sick. So it's really important that we put all of that aside, and especially if we're a manager or a supervisor, encourage people to report their symptoms. It's better to have shorthanded one day than have an entire school of children and individuals sick. So what do we report? Vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, which is a yellowing of the skin, sore throat with fever, any kind of cuts or infected wounds that are on our hands, wrist, or upper parts of our arms. And if you have a diagnosis of foodborne illness, or you have been exposed to someone or an organization that has a foodborne illness outbreak, then those are the things that we need to report to our manager. And then the manager needs to make sure that they respond appropriately. Yesterday we talked about the big six, and its exposure really to any foodborne illness, but the ones that are most transmittable that we focus on the most are the ones that you see listed here, the two viruses, which are norovirus and hepatitis A, and we're spending our time talking about norovirus today, as well as the 4 bacteria, E. coli, Shigella, Salmonella typhi, which is typhoid fever, and also non-typhoidal salmonella, which is our regular chicken and egg salmonella. We talked about this yesterday. SARS-CoV-2, known as COVID-19 or coronavirus, is not transmittable through food. They have yet to have any cases of coronavirus that have been transmitted through food. Surfaces, air, person to person is the most common way, but it has yet to be transmitted through food. So we're going to talk about exclusion and restriction here in just a minute. And yes, there are some additional guidelines that we need to follow related to COVID until we get this pandemic over. But we're going to be talking specifically about exclusion versus restriction related to our foodborne illness outbreaks. So yesterday we said that exclusion is you're Xing them out. You're not coming to work. You're excluded. So you're barred from coming to work. Versus restriction means that you come to work, but you're limited to only tasks that involve no food handling and not touching any food contact surfaces. And we went over a list of things that you could do. Yes, you can cashier. Yes, you can tear down cardboard boxes, you can mop and do floor maintenance things, you can put packaged food away, but not open containers of food, but you cannot work in the dish room, you can't touch any clean or dirty food or food contact surfaces. And I'll come back to why the dish machine is off limits. Even if you're working on the dirty side, you can't do that. So let's talk about these a little bit more in the difference between excluding and restricting. As you see here, we're excluding with the red X there for the symptoms that include vomiting, diarrhea, jaundice, and if you have a current diagnosis of a foodborne illness, including any of the big 6 pathogens. You're restricted if you have a sore throat with fever, if you have any infected cuts and wounds on your hands that are not properly covered. If you properly cover them, then you are allowed to work, or you have been exposed to a foodborne illness. Now that means that maybe someone in your household is sick with a foodborne illness. You don't have it, but you've been exposed to someone who has, or you've been to a restaurant that has a current outbreak. You don't have it, but you've been exposed to it. Sore throat with fever is specifically restriction with most of our school environment. If you are working with your kindergarten or daycare type aged children, then that would be considered a high-risk population. Same thing with hospitals and nursing homes. That's a high-risk population. In those scenarios, then sore throat with fever would be exclusion and not restriction. So let's test you out and see how you do. We have some scenarios here, and I am going to ask you if you would open up your participant button, and at the bottom of your participant button, you will see all of these little icons at the bottom of your participant button, which includes the check mark, you can work, the yes, you can work, the exclude, you can't work, or the no button, and then the raise hand, which means you're working, but you're working on restriction. So let's go through these together and see what the polling is based on our little icons at the bottom of your participant list. So Jessica has a cold with watery eyes, sneezing, and sniffles. So yes, she can work, no, she can't work, or she can work, but on restriction. Put your vote in to our participant list. Okay, I see a couple of people that have checked yes, some people have checked no. Some of you have said, a lot of you have said working, but working on restriction. So for this one, this person just has common cold symptoms, a cold with watery eyes, sneezing and sniffles. In a non-COVID world, this person may work. What about Nina? Nina is having bouts of vomiting. Let's hit those polls again. She works, she's excluded, she's restricted. We got vomiting. All right, great. All of you are putting on here that we are going to exclude Nina, and that is absolutely right. Because of that symptom, we know that she needs to be excluded. Okay, Jorge has a cut on his hand that is infected and uncovered. Work, not work, restricted. What do you think? Some of you are voting, some of you are not voting. And I see the majority of you have correctly put on there that Jorge can work, but works with restriction. All right. So because that cut on his hand is infected and uncovered, we would want him to work on restriction only. Once it's covered properly, that means the double barrier, he has a bandage and then a glove or a long sleeve glove if it's higher on his arm, then he could work unrestricted. So he's ready to work. Okay, Mia's husband has been diagnosed with norovirus. That means that Nina doesn't have it, but she has been exposed to someone in her household. So work, exclude, or restrict. What do you think? All right, good. I see that many of you have put on here that Mia is going to work. Oops, in a restricted fashion. Great. What about Leonard? Leonard has a persistent cough. Are we going to let him work, exclude him, restrict him? Okay, so Leonard actually gets to work. Again, that's a cough, cold type symptom. He's non-febrile. He doesn't have a fever or anything. So we can, just from a cough, cold, flu symptom, do not have to restrict him. Angie has a sore throat with fever. Do we work, exclude, or restrict? And we talked about this. She's not in a high-risk population. So yes, most of you are answering correctly that we want to restrict her because of that. Now, Angie has let's see, we got Angie. Annette has diarrhea. Do we let her work, restrict. Okay, great. Everybody's hitting the right button there. We do not want to let you work if you have vomiting or diarrhea. So Nina and Angie, you're staying home, and you're staying home until you're symptom-free for at least 24 hours. And for many of these, it really depends on what your health department would, when your health department would allow you to come back. Whoops. Just gave you that one away. So Linda has been diagnosed with norovirus. What are we going to do there? Great. Yeah. Okay. So I gave the answer away. We're letting her stay home because she's been diagnosed with norovirus. Now, if you have a diagnosis with norovirus, any of the big 6 pathogens, you have to notify the health department if you have an employee that has been diagnosed with any of the big 6 pathogens. And then the health department is going to be involved on when that person can come back to work. Generally with norovirus, it has to be 48 hours of being symptom-free. But keep in mind that you can still be shedding norovirus in your stool and in your vomit for up to 3 weeks. So it's really important when somebody comes back to work. It's always important when we work that we're really great hand washers and we prevent bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food. Okay, Ben's last diagnosis of last episode of diarrhea was 48 hours ago. What are we going to do? Are we going to let him work, or are we going to keep him out? Great. Yeah, Ben does get to come back to work. Absolutely right there. So we're letting him work. All right, good job, everybody. So we have seen that there are exclusion and restriction procedures in place, and it's really important that managers respond correctly when employees do report. And part of our training that we do is to make sure that employees know that they can freely communicate these symptoms to us and that there are not going to be any reprisals or negative impacts for them to report these symptoms to us. So that is the prevention. The 3-legged stool that FDA has put in place is to make sure that we prevent norovirus from ever happening, because it's a really tough pathogen to control once we have an outbreak. So preventing it is so very important by making sure that we're washing our hands, not touching foods with our bare hands, and then making sure that only work whenever we're well. So we want to make sure that we have no sick employees coming to work. All right, any questions about anything that we've talked about related to prevention? Any questions? All right, let's go on then with a quick little challenge. Now we are getting ready to start the A of our Everybody Plays a PART or part, and this is assembling a body fluid cleanup kit. Let me just say real quickly that you can, for many of your commercial vendors out there, buy these tiny little body fluid cleanup kits, and they do have a little bit of personal protective equipment, and they've got a tiny little bottle of disinfectant that is effective against norovirus and some other pathogens out there. But when we talk about the quantity of cleanup that we're about to talk about, many of these just don't have the resources in them. So I'm really going to encourage you to get your own big plastic tub and put your own items in your own body fluid cleanup kit. These might be okay for just cleaning up a little bit of blood here and there, and that's why these were originally, because we have lots of cuts that happen in kitchens, but it's really not effective for cleaning up body fluids from the volume that you would get from a vomiting incident. So they are out there, but we're talking about a little bit larger volume. So we're going to go through a list of what might be in that body fluid cleanup kit. And again, I'm going to ask you to open up that participant list and look at either using a PPE, which is our raise hand the button, or a cleaning, which is our yes check that we have on there. So which of these are for body fluid or for cleaning, and which are personal protective equipment? So a bucket or spray bottle, is that PPE or is that for cleaning? Okay, good. Everybody has that. That is for cleaning. That is correct. What about a disposable gown? Is that PPE or cleaning? Good. Everybody is putting a hand up. An effective disinfectant. That is for cleaning. And you'll notice that we say disinfectant, not sanitizer. Completely different animal that we'll just talk about here in just a minute. A face mask with a face shield. Good. Personal protective equipment. Great. Gloves. Also PPE. Good. Paper towels. Are they for cleaning or PPE? If you've on Facebook, you've probably seen some really creative masks, but nope, we're not going to use those for a face mask. We are going to use those for cleaning. What about a plastic garbage bag? PPE or cleaning? You've also probably seen people wearing plastic bags over them in Walmart for some of the memes out there with coronavirus. What about sand, cat litter, or commercial absorbent powder? That is also for cleaning. You're right. A scoop, small shovel, or dustpan? Good. And what about shoe covers? Yeah, that is your personal protective equipment. So good job, everybody. You did excellent there answering all of those questions. And it's really important that we have a body fluid cleanup kit assembled and ready to go. First of all, you're going to be working around body fluids, vomiting, diarrhea, you know, any other thing that could be possibly be in there. So we want to protect you first. And that's why we have all of these different components of a body fluid cleanup kit you see pictured here, including a mask that has a little splash cover here that protects your eyes from any splashing and aerosolized particles. It also protects your nose and your mouth from aerosolized particles. These would actually probably be pretty good to have around for coronavirus this fall too. So this does a double of shielding your eyes as well as shielding your nose and your face, because these aerosolized particles are coming in all around your face because they're floating out through the air. It could be anywhere around you. So you want to make sure that you're protecting your respiratory system. You also have a disposable gown, and this big long disposable gown is going to be, you know, pretty much full body coverage. We want to protect your clothes, and we also want to protect any skin. So it has long sleeves that go all the way down to the very end and covers over your thumb so that you're going to be covering in your entire body all the way down below your knees. So you've got a nice big disposable gown. Then you have shoe covers. Now remember that norovirus lasts on surfaces for at least a week, maybe longer, but based on some of the research out there. And so if you're wearing your shoes around a body fluid cleanup site and then you walk home in those same shoes, you could be, you know, stamping this into the floor where your children or grandchildren are playing in the floor where your shoes are. So we don't want to have that coming into your house on your shoes. So we've got shoe covers. And then of course, we're going to be talking about using lots and lots of gloves for the body fluid cleanup kit. That's why these small little kits maybe only have one pair of gloves. We're going to be talking about using multiple pairs of gloves. And we also possibly encourage you to double glove. We're not talking about foodborne illness prevention, we're talking about protecting you. And while we wouldn't double glove in a food service scenario, we might want to double glove if we're cleaning up body fluids, again, just to protect you. So those are the parts that are personal protective equipment, and they're there to protect you. The assembled cleaning supplies include a bucket, because we're probably going to be mopping, and a spray bottle to also put disinfectant in, either in the bucket or the spray bottle or both. We're going to have paper towels, a disposable, mop head. Why not reuse that mop head? Because it lasts on surfaces for very long periods of time. A mop head may cost you at the very most $5, $8. Throw it away. It would take you all day to clean that mop head to get it back under condition. So we want to throw that mop head away. You're going to have a garbage bag and twist ties. We're picking up a lot of things, throwing a lot of things away, so we want something that's designated for that to go in. A scoop or a dustpan to scoop up the stuff in, and that cat litter or absorbent powder, because you know, the stuff could be thin and runny. So we want that to thicken up the substance, the vomit or diarrhea that's there. Isn't this a great topic to have right before lunch? To solidify that so it's a lot easier to pick up and we're not splashing. So we've got the components of our body fluid cleanup kit, except we need to have a disinfectant. Now, we have talked earlier that our sanitizers are ineffective. They are not effective against norovirus. So we do need to have something that is effective against norovirus, and we're talking about a disinfectant that is, it's a much stronger chemical than a sanitizer is. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, has what is called the EPA List G, which is the products that are effective against norovirus. Just as a side note, you see on the bottom of the slide, the List N is the things that are effective against SARS-CoV-2 or coronavirus. So you might want to look at something that does double duty for right now, but having one that is effective against norovirus goes in our norovirus kit. In the absence of using some of those chemicals, you can use chlorine bleach at 5,000 parts per million. The mixture is 1 cup in a gallon of water. It is a very strong, very caustic substance, and so you want to make sure that you're wearing PPE for mixing this, and also have a well ventilated area, because it's going to have very strong fumes. And as always with any chemicals, we do not want to mix any chemicals together, because that could cause a very toxic chemical reaction if we're trying to mix these together. Now, the chlorine bleach is the 8.25% concentration. That's generally what we're finding on the shelves now. That used to have the other household bleach was 5.25, but now most of our concentrated bleach is going to be 8.25. So we've got personal protective equipment, we've got cleanup, and now we have an effective disinfectant that is listed effective against norovirus that's in our body fluid cleanup kit. So, any questions about personal protective equipment, about any of the things that would go in that body fluid cleanup kit? I'm going to take a quick breather and just see if you have questions. Feel free to open up your mic, pop any questions that you have at any time into our chat box. All right, well, let's get ready to respond. So you have a body fluid cleanup situation. The first thing we want to do is to effectively respond. And that response means that we stop all operations. If it's on the tray line, if it's in the cafeteria, wherever that 25-foot zone is that's being impacted, we're stopping all operations there. We're going to remove any individuals that are in that area and have everybody that's affected wash their hands, because again, every surface in that 25-foot zone is possibly contaminated. The next thing that we're doing is that we are putting on our personal protective equipment, including our shoe covers, our gown, our mask, and then these really all-important gloves, so that you're protected for doing this. Next, we want to solidify the substance. If it is vomit, and we're talking about a vomiting scenario here, that's where you would use that cat litter or absorbent powder to cover that with, so it's making it a little bit more solid, or you can use paper towels if you don't have that. And we're cleaning up and removing as much of that waste as possible with the scoop or dustpan that you have, and all of that is going into the bag that you have, that designated garbage bag. So covering it, scooping it up, throwing it into the designated garbage bag. Now, we have touched some really yucky stuff, and this is a time for us to stop and change our gloves before we go to the next step. And we're going to see how you can effectively change your gloves, take your gloves off, so that you're not contaminating your skin with whatever might be on the outside of the gloves. If we just watched that red video with washing our hands, it's kind of the opposite. Imagine you have all that red stuff on your gloves and you're trying to take off your gloves without getting red on your hands. So you'll notice that there's a certain sequence of pinching the gloves by the sleeve, taking it off inside out, using your fingers to go under the next sleeve and then pulling that so you have a nice little packet inside out. Hey, let's watch a video so you can see that happen again.
So our goal is to remove our gloves without getting the stuff that's on our gloves on our skin or on our scrubs. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our thumb and our index finger and we're going to pinch the cuff of one of the gloves. Then we're going to take the glove and peel it off. And we're going to grasp the glove completely in our hand and close our hand tight. Prevent it from hanging down because we don't want to touch it. Then we're going to take our index finger of our ungloved hand and we're going to slide it underneath the cuff of the glove. And we're just going to peel it off. And it puts it in a nice little bunch. And then we're going to throw it away and
there we go. So that is how you remove gloves in a sterile environment so that you're not getting that stuff on your hands. Now still, before you put gloves on, it's a good time to wash your hands and then put those gloves back on. So the next step after we have cleaned up the bulk of the waste is we're cleaning the area. And that is some good hot soapy water with either a mop head or some kind of a towel or the paper towels. Everything really needs to be disposable because we're talking about body fluids. So you're using hot soapy water to clean up that area. And everything that we're disposing goes into that designated trash bag that we've already talked about before. Again, we have possibly touched some really yucky things. So this is another time for us to change our gloves and wash our hands in between. The next step is for us to mix our disinfectant, and it's really important that we wait until we're ready to use that disinfectant to mix it because we want a fresh solution. It degrades over time while it sits, so that's whenever you want to open that brand new bottle of bleach, because the longer bleach sits on the shelf after it's been opened, the more quickly it degrades, and usually within 30 days, it's not as effective. It's not that 8.25% anymore. Also, with your EPA registered chemicals that are effective against norovirus, wait and open a brand new bottle. So you're mixing it to whatever the recommended concentration is of that EPA substance, or with the bleach, we're putting 1 cup per gallon. Again, very caustic. We want to make sure that we have a well-ventilated area and that you're wearing personal protective equipment. Now, the 5,000 parts per million, that 1 cup per gallon, is for your direct exposure areas, the part that was affected with body fluids. We don't have to use something that concentrated whenever we're talking about other surfaces around there. We can use 1,000 parts per million, and that's 4 teaspoons per gallon that would give us the 1,000 parts per million. So we're mixing chemicals. Obviously, we want to label our bottle before we use that. Now we're spraying the affected area with 5,000 parts per million, and that 25-foot zone, remember those aerosolized particles are sprinkling all around, and every food contact surface, every bit of food, everything around in our area is going to be impacted. So we want to spray all of that area with our chemical and make sure that you're including those high touch surfaces that we will talk about in just a minute. So high touch surfaces, everything around is sprayed with that. So speaking of that, let's talk about high touch surfaces. I gave a couple of examples earlier, but if you want to open your mic or use the chat box, what are some other surfaces that are touched a lot in your kitchens? Coolers. Yeah, Roberta says coolers. So the handles on your coolers and the inside of the shelving and coolers. What else? A pen pad, yes, keyboards and pen pads, absolutely right. Steamer handles, doors, says Karen, and also Ruth. And thanks, Amanda, for the door handles. The stove handles and drawer handles, yeah, Roberta, those are also places that could be affected. The front edge of the serving line, yeah, I'm sure that everybody touches that area, both on the student side and on our side. Pens. What are some other high touch surfaces? Do you have a common telephone that you might use? Tables, plastic dispensers, good. The walls. All right. You know, think about the soap dispenser where you're getting soap out, or your hand sanitizer dispenser, the box that has all the gloves in them. There's a really encouragement to use a glove dispenser so that you don't have bare hands that are sticking in there. The microwave, Karen says, the tray rack, says Roberta, and Amanda, the condiment pumps. Yes. So we've got so many high touch surfaces that if those aerosolized particles are flying around in our kitchen or on the serving line or out in the cafeteria, you have to think of all of those high touch surfaces. That's why we want to stop production, because anything is possibly contaminated with norovirus and we need to prevent that further spread. So good job, everybody. You did great on answering that. So in addition to our step, we have now sprayed down with this chemical. You're allowing it to sit for the designated contact time. Now, because of this is a caustic substance and it is disinfectant strength, not sanitizer strength, we want to do a clean water rinse and then allow that area to air dry. So we have hopefully prevented norovirus, but if we have a body fluid cleanup kit, we want to make sure we have assembled a kit and we've responded effectively. Now we're washing our hands, one more time doing a glove change. Now, most of the time we're not going to have cloth surfaces, but in the event that you have cloth surfaces, it's going to require steam cleaning. Most of the disinfectants we're talking about would discolor the cloth surfaces, so effectively you would want to steam clean for at least 5 minutes at 170 degrees. And any food in that area needs to be disposed of. We're talking about open, exposed food, and we're talking about any food that can't be effectively disinfected on the outside. If somebody throws up right where the milk carton, all the milk cartons are, I mean, think about running every one of those carts, having to disinfect every one of those cartons of milk. That just might not be cost effective for us to do that. So anything packaged that we can't effectively disinfect on the outside, we would also want to throw away. Obviously, we want to document that so that we can get reimbursed because of that for disaster means. Washing our hands, changing our gloves one more time. We're also disposing of all of those things that can be disposed of. If they're non-disposable, they also need to be disinfected. Again, I encourage you to use as much disposable as you possibly can. And we're going to then, after we've done all of this responding, then we're removing our personal protective equipment one piece at a time and putting everything in that bag. And then that bag needs to go into a designated area where body fluids can be disposed of. Some schools require red bagging of things that could have body fluids in. Other school districts don't require that, and it can just go in the dumpster. So whatever your plan is, you need to have a designated disposal area. And then the last thing after we've taken our PPE off is we're washing our hands, and if there's a possibility that your clothes have been soiled, it's a good thing to go ahead and take your clothes off and put a different set of clothes on and make sure that those are washed effectively. Washed effectively, that means in your washer on the highest, hottest, longest cycle, and in the dryer on the hottest, longest cycle as well. Now, the last part of our acronym of PART is total cleanup. We have now used a really harsh chemical and we have rinsed that area, but then we want to go back and do our normal wash, rinse, and sanitize routine, and that is our last step in PART. Lisa says, just a note, it's illegal to dispose of red bag medical waste at the regular garbage dumpster. Okay, so thank you for that, Lisa. Again, you want to have a plan for what you do with body fluids, and if it's a red bag, this is not necessarily medical waste like your sharps that you have, but if body fluid can't be disposed of that way, then you do need to have whatever your designated area is for your school district. So thanks, Lisa, for that. Okay, so we've got total cleanup. So we all play a part, and the key thing here is we don't ever want a norovirus outbreak in our school, but sometimes body fluid happens and we have to be ready. We have to be prepared and have that body fluid cleanup kit assembled and everyone trained. We need to respond properly when we do this and then do a final total cleanup step so that we're ready. So that's how we hopefully can all play a part in norovirus prevention. Now we are going to do a post-assessment. I've got a couple of things for you to do after we do the post-assessment, just to show you a couple of resources that are available to you, and then we will finally end with an evaluation. So this is the time where Megan is going to be putting the link to this in our chat box in the event that you don't have your phone and can't use the QR code scanning process. You can just open up the chat box and click on the hot link. I will set my timer for about 4 minutes, and if you could raise your hand when you're done and use that same 4-digit number that you used earlier today. I'll be quiet for 4 minutes and check back with you when you're done.